Well, this is another of my talks led by the tarot. And I promise you, it is totally led by the tarot now. I don't even think it out. So whatever cards come up gives me my cue to what I want to talk about. It's not time bound, so whenever you access it is the right time. And it's not for any particular zodiac sign or a particular person. It's a message for humanity. I'm just using the cards to spark inspiration in what I talk about. So I hope you get something from it. Well, this does look an interesting spread. I'm sure what it's talking about is that whatever we believe is important isn't really important. And that in order for us to progress as humanity, as society, we need to abandon these narcissistic trinkets and ways of expanding our energy. We need to abandon these and embrace a life much more as God intended, a much purer life. And we're going to find it really difficult to do that. You know, we're going to keep going through these crises. And with each one, you know, we'll think, well, we've moved on from that. Almost like a Hegelian dialectic. We get one crisis, we resolve it, but then there's another crisis. And it's because we're not really learning, and I'm sure that's what the message is in this spread. But let's look at it in more detail. And the card or the energy that runs through this entire reading is that of the Nine of Cups. I mean, it's a nice card. It's blessings. It's blessings probably of wealth, probably of love. But even though I say that, we're by ourselves. And you see, we think we're blessed with these things, including love. But we treat others as possessions, as something that we should control. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have a trophy wife or whatever the male equivalent of that is. I'm just suggesting that none of us really understand love, because we don't even know how to love ourselves, let alone others. So we can't love God till we've understood ourselves. So these things that we think make us happy are the exact opposite. They're the things that divert us from what would really make us happy. And this is an energy that runs through this entire spread. So it is on how we get so diverted, how we get things so wrong and continue to get them wrong. Now, I argue that this is about hegemony, but, well, I think it is, but hegemony sort of implies almost a Syracy, you know what I mean? It almost implies that, and I don't think it works that way. I think it's natural that people try, or certainly those in authority, try to impose their views upon us. And that is a hegemony, but I don't think it's as planned as hegemony suggests. It's just that we're required to think like others, when really I'm certain the universe is saying, no, it's the opposite way round. I want you to think for yourself. I want you to love yourself. And only by doing that can you understand the majesty of the universe, the majesty of God. And particularly at times like this, so many of us turn to religion. Maybe it's spirituality, maybe it's just tried and tested ways of doing things. We look for answers from others. When I'm certain this reading is saying that the answers that we really need are inside ourselves, that if we keep being spoon-fed answers from others, we will keep getting things wrong. And you know, if I've learned anything from the past few years, it is that those who lead us, those who are in positions of authority, those who say, trust me, are the people that we really shouldn't trust. And I'm not. I mean, yes, they are greedy. Yes, they are manipulative. Yes, they do lie. Yes, they are corrupt. But I don't hate them. They're children. They're children. They're no better than the worst children in the playground at my first school, which is called a primary school in England. And in the end, we learnt to ignore these children, but we don't seem to with those who call themselves our betters. We just go on, you know, thinking that the next one will somehow be different. And we seem to have been, and I'm not just talking of politics, but every position of authority, we seem to have got the very worst people in those positions. And we never seem to learn from it. And we have to start learning from ourselves, because we can't trust what we've seen as authority, including religious authority. Now, I'm a deeply religious man. I'm a Muslim, you know, deeply religious. But I was going to say including my religion, but I think I should say especially my religion, or what people believe is Islam, has got it so completely wrong. And this has to be to do with this thing I call hegemony, this pushing the ideas of those people who call themselves betters, including religious leaders, onto others, when they've actually got it. It's the actual inverse of what it should be. So I think the message is that I'm not rubbishing religion, but I'm saying what so many people see as religion simply doesn't provide the profound answers that we need. And as a result of this hegemony, we restrict ourselves, we restrict what we do. Now, you know, some of you might be saying, well, we need laws, we need restrictions, but I don't think people are naturally bad. I don't necessarily think they're naturally good either. But laws just seem to confirm the existing power relations in society, including religious laws, you know, Sharia, if you like. And that is so far removed from what it ought to be. But we self-restrict ourselves. I mean, the last few years has been brutal. I've not understood it, because if you ask me, we've been living through a brave new world with our own self-imposed restrictions. So why on earth move to a 1984? Because in doing so, so many of us have seen just how brutal things are. And I think that means that we're not prepared to self-restrict ourselves as much as we have in the past. Doesn't mean to say we won't self-restrict ourselves, but as much as we have in the past. I mean, you know, come on. We all knew, and we were told that there was no point whatsoever in face masks. In fact, as the truth is coming out, they probably did more harm than good. But for me, it was the fact that you can't engage with people if you can't see their face. Which, of course, in France, French officials argue for that against the burqa. And I think they've got something of a point there, I think they need to be more compassionate with it, but I think they do have something of a point there. So we did comply. We complied with the most ridiculous restrictions. There's loads of evidence now that whatever was behind the health crisis, vitamin D, i.e. sunlight, was probably the best prophylactic available. And yet we were locked in our homes. And I didn't want to go outside with a mask on. And I wasn't allowed in many places anyway. So what was the point? So I just stayed in looking at four walls. So these are the self-imposed restrictions. And even since the restrictions have been lifted, I wasn't allowed in shopping malls. I wasn't allowed on public transport. I wasn't allowed in government offices. I wasn't allowed to leave the island of Java. And I've sort of got used to it. There's a resistance now within me saying, well, if it's too much trouble, I won't bother. So we do self-restrict ourselves. And we're reminded that nothing lasts. Change is inevitable. But a part of the reason for that change is we keep constructing towers of Babel. Because of this thing that I call hegemony, but, I'm reluctant to really call it that. I don't have another word for it. We have a view of society which is fundamentally wrong, a view of humanity which is fundamentally wrong. We're told that man is evil, is nasty, is manipulative. And we construct laws around that, when that at best describes 20% of the population. So we keep constructing, as I say, these edifices based on the wrong foundation. And inevitably they will fall down. We need to keep reconstructing society. But we'll keep getting it wrong because we keep getting the fundamentals wrong. We no longer create things with humanity in mind, but with the needs of the elite in mind. And even they're not happy, Yes, they've got their super yachts and their Instagram influencers on those yachts and whatever they get up to with them. But they're not happy. In fact, they're extremely unhappy. And whilst we have a society, including the influencers, and whilst we got a society that's based on this charade, then it's always bound to come tumbling down and create chaos, and it's always chaos for the people at the bottom. And we need to keep reconstructing society. But shouldn't we get it right one time? Shouldn't we really understand what are the foundations? The foundations of keeping humanity happy, the foundations of living together. I don't think we do learn, though. And we're all preoccupied with our obligations as we see it. We see it that we must do this, we must do that. We're all like hamsters on a wheel, running round and running round. And, If you ask them where they're going, they'll say, well, we don't really know, but we've got to keep going, got to keep going. You know, we have to keep paying the rental on massively expensive apartments. We have to keep paying the hire purchase on expensive trinkets that don't really make us happy, especially our Lamborghinis or whatever it might be, you know. We're in this sort of race, and it's a race to the bottom, a race of misery, the hamster's wheel. But we just feel that we're obliged to keep doing these things. And that if we don't do them, maybe our family will be unhappy, maybe we will be unhappy. But we already are grossly unhappy. We're just so preoccupied, we can't even see it. I'm sounding very pessimistic, but change is possible. Change is possible if we move on from what we think is real, what we think is important, but also remove the baggage, remove the hurt, remove the feeling that we've been hard done by, remove the feeling that we're victims, and move on to embrace a much more loving, much more caring attitude. And if enough of us do this, then dramatic change is possible. But it's very difficult because we're all on this hamster's wheel that I talk of. But we do have to move on if we want to create something better. We have to move on. We have to forgive. We have to forget. We have to take each day as it comes, each day as a new day, each day filled with the bounty that God has given us, each day filled with the love that God wants us to find. And this is a real love, not a love of ownership and control, but a love that's unconditional, that simply comes from the love of humanity, the love of nature. But we need to love ourselves first. And when we've done those things, then we can embrace religion. We can embrace God. But we can't know anything about God until we know about ourselves. And we keep finding ourselves back where we were before. You know, even if things change dramatically, what we're looking for is to restore what we had before, to restore the trinkets that we owned, to restore the sort of life that we had before, which, as I've said, was built on the wrong foundation. And will always be lonely. Even though we might have got families, we might have got loved ones, ultimately we feel so alone because we can't embrace what is true love. We can't embrace anything outside of our consumer fetishism. And we have to abandon that. We have to move on as a community of humans, loving all, not fearing others, not constructing ever more authoritarian laws and punishments because we're so fearful of fellow humans. We have to see the gift of community, the gift of humanity. And then maybe we can build something on the right foundation. But unless we sort of do abandon the past, dump our baggage, we're destined to keep making the mistakes of the past. And it's this incredible loneliness, this incredible feeling of individualism, that we're out against the world. I suppose it's a form of an alienation that we feel, and that's the root of our unhappiness. And we have to address that. And we can only do that by looking inside ourselves and finding the answers, not seeking them from others.